Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday night at Knox Makers. We gather every Tuesday night, rain or shine, no matter the weather, no matter the holiday. We share projects we're working on. We share failures. We share successes. We help each other. And we just show off a good makerly community. So that's what we're doing tonight. We've got a few people on the list. And we will start with Evan, who will show a bike fork, which I presume makes it very easy to eat a bike.
Hello everyone. I think probably a couple months ago at this point, I had a bike frame in here and mentioned I was thinking about making a fork. I haven't made one before, but obviously I decided to make one, so just finished it up. I actually just finished brazing these on earlier today. But I was hesitant to try and make one because I didn't have a lot of tools, like fixtures and things to actually make this. So I shared some of those a couple weeks ago. I made this brake fixture. And this is like a dummy axle that goes in here, and then it mounts the brake tab. Let me zoom this out. This goes in here and positions the brake where it actually needs to be to work with the bike. And then I made this other dummy axle that aligns the dropouts. They're slotted. And then I needed a way to weld it, so I made a 3D printed welding fixture, which actually worked out really well. There's a couple parts that were a little loosey-goosey in setting it up, but you know, most of the parts that were contacting the bike fork parts were metal, so you know, didn't have any melting. And I basically I had a 3D model of this, and then I just put in like a fake welding table, and then I just filled in some space and, you know, plugged it into the welding holes. So all these parts just kind of, you know, sit into the welding table, and that positions the axle. And then I have some other ones that position the tubes, which is like a piece of bar through there. I also 3D printed a little phase block, but it all worked out pretty well. It was, you know, much faster than trying to machine everything. So I have, like I said, I have this model of the bike. And so I use this to kind of, you know, design all the other parts around. I have some racks I'm thinking about, so maybe in a couple months I'll have those. But these two tubes were especially tricky because they're really small, but also two of the cuts are like twisted. And so I actually just printed out some templates and then taped them on and kind of just eyeballed those with like a hand file, and it worked out pretty well. But I'll show it to you in the fixture because that's probably the more interesting bit. So there it is. I had to use some rubber bands and some little magnet things, but worked out pretty well. There was like, I didn't have a way to align this to these, so I kind of eyeballed that. It's pretty straight. I just put a wheel in it earlier today, and it fits, and it's not terribly crooked, so I think I'll just bend them straight. But yeah, there you are. So that kind of just holds it up, and then there it is on the frame. Anyway, so yeah, those are all the pieces just kind of snapped in there. So this front one sets, you know, the distance you care about for a fork is like the axle to crown, and so that sets that position, and then yeah, those just hold the tubes and then hold the axle. So if you ever need a very unique welding fixture, you know, maybe 3D print one. It worked out pretty well. But yeah, that's it. It's I'm gonna paint it. I'll probably be back, you know, like I said, pretty slow with these, so probably a couple months. I'll be back with a painted bike, and then another couple months, maybe I'll put some wheels on it and actually ride it. But anyways, any questions?
How many hours total will you have?
I don't know. I mean, not a ton. Honestly, making these parts took the longest. Oh gosh, it's so zoomed in. Making all the fixtures took me the longest. There's not a ton of precise, you know, only certain dimensions are important, so that was a bit easier. But yeah, I don't know. I started this last year sometime, whenever, a couple months ago. So a lot of time in between. I made a few other projects in between, but mostly just been working on this. Stared at it on the computer for far too long before I actually bought materials. So yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Evan. Next up, we've got Neil with a scrap wood experiment.
In the wonderful world of woodworking, there is one curse that we all face from time to time called tear out. And that happens when you're trying to get a nice smooth finish and the fibers of the wood sort of like get caught on the edge of the blade and get pushed to a side, and anyway, it's a mess and it's almost impossible to get rid of it once you got it. So I've been experimenting over the past several years of different things to eliminate tear out, or at the very best minimize it. There's some commercial material out there or chemicals out there that I've tried, but a lot of the times it has color tints to it and changes the color of the wood. So last week I was doing my usual go through YouTube just for the heck of it, because what the heck, got an hour to waste, go through YouTube. And somebody was showing something that they had done with styrofoam and xylene, the chemical xylene. Now, if you're not familiar with xylene, xylene is a liquid that is used sometimes to thin epoxies and oils. And this person was using the xylene to actually dissolve styrofoam in it. Now, I had seen in the past where people have used acetone and put styrofoam in it, and it's like a great, if you've never done it, you might want to try it. It's kind of interesting to see the stuff just melt down and nothing and bubble up. Styrene, however, or xylene rather, and styrofoam, instead of just becoming a gooey mass, it actually dissolves in it and ends up as a clear liquid. So, aha, I'm going to try this on some wood. And about 6-7 months ago, there's this piece of scrap wood that was in the scrap bin back in the woodworking zone that Brian corrected me tonight. I thought it was pine, but it turns out that it's laminated beech. And there was a really nice sized chunk of it back there. And I decided I'm going to put this on the lathe and see what I can make with it. And when I started doing that, there was the dreaded tear out again that I was trying to get rid of. And I thought, what a great chance to try out the xylene and the styrofoam. So I took roughly 2 cubic feet of styrofoam, a lot, and dissolved it down into 6 ounces of xylene. And it had a slightly syrupy effect to it. Because it was so thin, I was able to brush it on the wood after I turned it down somewhat, and it soaked into the wood. Now, styrofoam is actually an expanded polystyrene plastic. Polystyrene plastic is the same plastic that's used in CD cases and disposable flatware or food utensils. So it's a pretty hard plastic. The xylene evaporates very quickly, leaving just behind the styrene or the polystyrene. So the effect was better than I expected it to be. It was clear. It soaked right into the wood. I turned it down once, got it put on this, the mixture, and then sanded down and put it on a second time and then sanded that down. And this little piece of wood here, which is an offshoot of this big piece, became this. And it just, and this is not the finest finish I would normally give it, because I was just curious to see if it was going to work, and it worked a lot better than I thought it would. So this is something, if you're a woodworker and you're plagued with tear out, you might want to try that. Start saving your styrofoam and get a gallon of xylene. You can get it at Home Depot and Lowe's, I believe. They sell it in the paint department. One caveat, I really caution you, it's very toxic stuff in the sense of you don't want to be breathing this. You don't want it on your skin. And when I was mixing it up, I was in front of my roll-up doors with a fan going and just blowing it away. And the same thing when I applied it. I applied it, and the other thing, like I said, it evaporates quickly. I put on my one coat, and I was able to put it back on the lathe 5 minutes later and keep working on it. So it's pretty amazing if you want to experiment with something like this. I'll go ahead and pass it around so you can get a feel for it. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
So how does that actually work? Does it soak in the wood far enough to?
Yeah, it does.
Didn't make you shave off the coating right away?
No, it went down into the wood, and this is actually beech, which is somewhat of a dense wood. I was surprised. Originally, I thought this was pine until Brian corrected me. It's beech, and I was amazed at how far in it went in. And the other thing too is, even though it was 2 cubic feet of styrofoam and 6 ounces of xylene, I could have kept adding more and more styrofoam. So you can like make it as thick or as thin as you want. And I think if it's a very tight grain wood, it probably would still soak some up, but it would still be enough that it would get in between the fibers of the wood and harden it up so it would, you could do it. My next experiment is going to be with green wood to see how much it will soak up in green wood. Sue?
Yeah, you said that the xylene evaporates?
Very fast.
Okay, so do you have to be careful at how much you mix up at a time? Can you preserve it till you need it again next day or two?
Not really. I have it, and I'm surprised. I had it in this old coffee jar, glass jar. It doesn't affect the glass, but I thought the plastic lid would start getting soft. So I just put the lid on it, and I've had it now for a couple of weeks, and it has not evaporating. I'm sure if I left the lid off, it would evaporate, but yeah. Larry?
Original piece of wood, was that like a manufactured beam or something?
Yeah, well, I know Brian may be able to share more information on that because he's the one who's originally used this wood. Okay. Say again, one? At paint department of Home Depot or Lowe's, they have it. I was trying to get a quart can because I was experimenting with it. I didn't want to get a whole gallon, but I broke down. I brought the gallon. The gallon costs about $25, and so far I've only used 6 ounces of it, so it's going to last a while. Yes.
Would that impact the ability to stain it?
Yeah, I think it would. But if you're starting out with wood that you don't want the color to change and you don't want to really affect it with using some other type of finish, then this is the way to go. Because like I say, this is where you can see anytime you put a finish on wood, on raw wood, you're going to get a little bit of color change because of how light is reflected off of it. But the color here is very similar to what it did not affect the color at all.
Definitely worth, I guess be careful with how much heat, basically the recipe for a Molotov cocktail.
I got the first part, I didn't get that. Say it one time.
Yeah, dissolving styrofoam and like flammable liquor.
Mhm.
Kind of how you make a Molotov cocktail.
I imagine this would probably be what napalm is like. Because it warns you on the can, do not use this in an enclosed area. And it wasn't so much a warning about your health, it was more of a warning of how explosive it could be if it was contained and there was a spark. So yeah, you want to be really careful. Plus I was wearing an activated carbon respirator when I was working with it. So, do what? No. Now that once it's covered, in fact, I was originally considering the idea of turning this into a bird bath and see how long it would hold water. I think it's pretty impervious to water too, because styrene plastic is a hard plastic and it's fairly waterproof. So you probably could use I don't think there would be an issue if they use polystyrene for eating utensils and the xylene itself totally flashes off when it evaporates. I don't think there would be anything toxic left behind that you couldn't use this for food. But I didn't say that, so don't come back to me if you have any issues.
Did you buff that finish, or
I did a little bit. The one drawback on this, or actually it's a plus and a minus, being that it is the plastic, if you go to sand it and you build up any kind of heat, polystyrene is a, what's the word for, heatable plastic that will melt. There's a term for that. Thermoplastic, thank you. So it is a thermoplastic, and the heat of sanding will melt it, and it will cause a bit of a streak to it. I'll pass it around. You'll see somewhat of a texture there. Next piece that I experiment with, I probably will try spraying it with water while I'm sanding it to keep the heat from building up and melting the plastic on the surface. But if you make a thin enough solution of the styrofoam and the xylene, chances are it could be put on as a finish that would level fairly well, and you wouldn't even have to buff it out. That's one of the other things I'm going to experiment with next. Anybody else? Okay, thanks.
All right, we had Evan with using plastic to make metal stuff. We've got Neil using polystyrene to make wood stuff. I don't know what Rob has, but it's called SBC, so it's probably something really interesting.
It's SBC, single board computer, so no plastics. I've been working on a computer. I like to build electronic things, so I'm going to show it up here first. But that's the computer that I built. This is a retro. I've been doing a lot of retro lately. Let's see if it'll focus. There we go. So this is a 6809, circa about I think it's dated on the chip about 1982, 3, maybe 4. So this is basically a computer from the 80s that's all hand wired. And I've liked to build these for a lot of years. This is one that I built in 1987. I think the date's on here somewhere. There it is. We zoom in here. Upside down. So here's July 1987. I built this single board computer. So it's been a couple of years. This one is a Zilog Z80 computer. So I thought, I think I came across that board and decided I've always wanted to make a 6809. Radio Shack sold a color computer, which was running 6809. So this, I'm going to end up putting a few different operating systems on this when it's all set. I did finally get it talking. Oh, here's my phone. I got it talking, and I'll show you just. So this is on my bench with all the logic analyzers on it to kind of keep an eye on what it's trying to do. And then this is it now plugged into my computer, and it's I've got the serial communications working, so my communication port is operational. So I've got a few more things. I'm going to dress this up, put probably a floppy drive on it, 3.5-inch floppy drive on it. I will put a thumb drive as a hard drive on it so that I can run a couple different operating systems. From here, I'm going to build a 6502. That was the original Apple computers were 6502 processors. And after that, I'm probably going to do an 8088 single board computer. I've just kind of figured I'd get a whole bunch of them done in a row. The 8088 was IBM's PC that first came out. So that was, I'm going to build one of those, probably actually run DOS on it. But again, hand wired and build it. So that's what I've been working on lately.
What's the address range for 6809?
64K. It's an 8-bit processor. 64K words. K bytes, actually, not words, because words is known as 16. But yeah, 64,000 bytes of memory is the maximum addressable space. And IBM, with their IBM PC, used what's called the 8088, which was still an 8-bit computer, but it could address a meg or a megabyte of RAM all at once. Remember our 640K if you were alive back then. So, you know, that's why I'm going to build one of those that'll be able to address all the way up to there. Still an 8-bit computer. These are all 8-bit computers I'm building. But what's really nice is all of the software from that era is free and in the public domain now. So every one of those games, every one of the operating systems, the ROMs and all that stuff, you can just freely download source code, make modifications to it. So it's not like in the olden days. I have some old ads for some of the software that this is running that's dated in the 80s, and they want $300 for a C compiler, and now I get to choose between 15 of them all for free. So, so that's the advantage. Yeah, Brian. Ooh. I do have. I actually just installed DOS to make sure I could install it on an old PC, because I figured as I get there, I want to make sure I have some of that stuff. So yes, I what was that? No, it was DOS 1.1, I think. Very early DOS. So, and on the 5 1/4, I don't have any media. I had saved in my archive. It's a 5 1/4 and a 3 1/2 in a single unit, so that the old days, because that way you can convert your 5 1/4 to 3 1/2 as it was moving. So I saved that drive, but I have no 5 1/4 media that I could find. I did look it up. They want $75 for 10 of them. I said, you know, it's not worth it. So, yeah, the 8-inch, yes. So, any other questions? All right, thanks.
Well, I don't know if Neil's Molotov cocktail is involved or not, but Brian is here to talk about an exploding nightstand.
I'm not going to hold that up. They're not attached, and I don't really want it falling on myself. So normally when you build furniture, you sufficiently dry the lumber first. If you're bringing it into an air-conditioned space, you want about 8% moisture content. So in order to get that, you cut a tree down, you mill it into a board, you wait like a year and a half, and then you go and start doing stuff with it. I'm working on a cabin right now, which has a really rustic, rough and ready kind of feel, and I'm being cheap. So I went and bought a whole trailer full of rough sawn pine, and it was milled like a week before I picked it up. Some of the guys in the shop helped me pick it up. The benefit of that is a 10-foot long board costs $15 or $10, I think. And if I would have bought like seasoned stock, it would have been 5 times that amount. Here she comes. Anyway, the downside to using green lumber is it hasn't shrunk, it hasn't equilibrated, it hasn't done anything yet. Oh, Babbitt. So anyway, I built 4 of these nightstands. I just built the legs today, so I haven't even attached the tops yet. So it's not done yet. But it's a traditional like raised panel back. It's done using all of the correct techniques to build fine furniture, but nope, okay, nope, absolutely not. Can't be trusted. But it's interesting, in the I think a week and a half since I built them, they are shrinking wildly fast, and they are probably going to explode on me. So I'm gonna come in tomorrow and probably start putting splines in them to try to hold them together. But all of my joints were really tight when I made them, and they're starting to check out now and pull apart. It's kind of interesting to watch it happen. There's not gonna be any drawers in these, so like if they change shape, it doesn't really matter. But it's just kind of neat to watch it go. If more than one of these things totally comes into multiple pieces, I just won't be surprised. If you look at a couple of them out on the glue up table, there's some massive checks running down them already. It's just been fun to watch. So I call them my exploding nightstands, because they're doing it slowly, but they are exploding on me. So anyways, that's what they are. Any questions? No? Right on. Yeah.
What kind of joints are exploding?
So the joints are exploding. The boards themselves are. Yeah. So right now I do have just miter joints, which are not the strongest thing in the world anyway. My mortise and tenons I do think will stay together. Yeah, I think the miters just need some splines to make certain they don't pull apart fully. They're definitely going to open up. They're not going to be perfect into the future, and let's hope for the best. If nothing else, I don't have that much into them, so yeah. Nice. Thanks, y'all.
Last on our formal written list is Sean with Upcycled Box.
So a few months ago, we got a big donation of just some random boxes, and so they were just these router bit sets, and they had like holders inside, and they were just kind of like, but there was like dozens of them. And we're just like, well, they're like not bad. They probably have some use, right? So we like pulled the holders out of there, and you know they got this clasp or whatever, but they're just kind of ugly. But I got to thinking, and I was like, I'll bring it home and I'll find something to do with it. And I was measuring the inside dimensions, and I was like doing some mental math, and I was like, I think these would actually make a really good dice box for like D&D dice. And so I did some internal measurements, and I found that like you could fit like several sets of dice across here with like some little dividers. So I grabbed some like pieces of plastic and measured it and glued everything up in there and put the dice in, and I was like, wow, that's actually like pretty nice. The dice fits really nicely in there. And I was like, but it still looks ugly, and my glorious dice cannot live in such a homely state. So I was like, well, let me like line the inside with something nice. So I grabbed some leather scraps from leatherworking and some suede and felt, and I covered the dividers, and I put an open area here to like toss the dice in. And I was like, oh, that's looking a little bit better. What about the outside now? This thing looks ugly. And so I did some stuff to the outside, and I was like, this looks pretty good, but this latch is really ugly. What am I going to do? It doesn't fit with the theme of the box at all. So I ordered some latches off of Amazon. And so next thing you know, I've spent about like $20 to $30, but now I've ended up with a D&D themed dice box here. And yeah, so inside, like I said, it fits 3 across. I used plastic, some just random piece of plastic I had, lined it all with some suede scraps, and this has got some leather in here, different colors and stuff. And then I sanded the entirety of the outside and took off this varnish and did like pickling, watered down some acrylic paint so it just soaked in. You could still see like the wood grain. Then I attacked it with a saw and a screwdriver and stuff to give it battle damage. And then I took my engraving pen and I engraved some designs on the side. Come on. Yeah, there we go. Engraved some designs on the side with that, and then carved some runes into the back. If you're up to date on your Dwarvish, you should be able to read what that says on there. And then some Draconic script on the top, and then I filled it in with some glow-in-the-dark pigment powder mixed in with some resin. And so it doesn't really, you won't be able to tell here, but when it's in the dark, it does glow pretty brightly in complete dark. And that, I will give you a hint, that is my name in Draconic. So, but yeah, and then I just filled in some of the other runes with that, and like I said, I got a latch off of Amazon that I thought was more fancy, and then just did some simple painting just to cover up some of the place where the old hardware was. So yeah, the free junk box ended up costing me $30, but I rather like the end product, and it's just something that I can carry around to games or whatever. And yeah, it's a mobile gaming unit there. And yeah, and we've got a ton, so if you want to make your own, they're out there. And if we want to do like a make along or something like that, as I was making it, I was like, oh, I've just got all these ideas for what to do next about it. And eventually I just had to call it and say, okay, I think I'm good. I've done enough with this. But yeah, it was pretty fun to make. And now I've got my my dice box. Yeah. Any questions?
It looks like a lamp face to me.
I mean, it could be. All right, thanks everybody.
That's our list. Is there anyone who either missed the list or had a fit of inspiration in the last 20 minutes who wants to share? Yes?
All right, everyone. I'm an introvert.
to the mic. Yeah. Introvert. Did not want to come up here, but I'm doing it because I really want to show this off. So when we came, everyone was like, what interests you about here? What do you like to do? And I love to sew. And I would tell people I'm a quilter, but that's a little bit false because I've only made quilt tops. I've never actually quilted the 3 layers together. I was not enough of a masochist to attempt to quilt on my home machine. Like, it's just too much. So when I came and Sue was introducing the Quiltinator that was coming soon, we were talking a lot about it. I said I was excited, and she was drafting the instruction class for the machine itself, and it's coming up in the 18th, I think is the first class. Soon. So end of the month, towards the end of the month, there's 3 classes up. But I actually took her test class where she was testing her teaching on me, and I have my very first quilt top that I have ever made in my entire career as a quilter, quote unquote. And so I wanted to show you from here so you can see officially, and not see too closely that the lines are crooked. This is my first quilt. Still need to actually bind it, hold that over and finish it up. But it was a learning experience. I broke it a couple times. I had a couple panic messages to Sue, but I did it, and I'm very, very excited. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All right. Ashley stole my thunder a little bit by announcing the Quiltinator class. That's the name of our long arm quilting machine, which looks really cool. We do have a class coming up on for that April 18th, and then others later in the month. Other classes we've got, how to draw flowers is happening with maybe a 5 or 10 minute break right after this. Just hang out. We got stuff to make flowers. Matt is going to walk us through it, and we're going to make beautiful art together. So stick around if you like for that. We have next new member onboarding next Tuesday. So if I see some new faces here. If you're interested in joining, you do have to go to new member onboarding. You have to. It's terrible. No, it's really fun. It's a really good, inspiring kind of thing to attend. Sorry, Isaac. It's just really. No, it's really cool. I come back occasionally just to see it again, right? And that's coming up next Tuesday. On Wednesday the 9th, we have a metalworking shop authorization that's going to teach MIG welding. So if you want to use any of the stuff in the metalworking shop, you need this, and you'll learn how to MIG weld. That's a prerequisite for like TIG welding. So if you want to TIG weld, then go ahead and get your MIG weld under your belt. Saturday, April 12th, there's going to be a small repairs with hand sewing class. So like my son is recently patching up some jeans. He would probably benefit from this class because his patching doesn't look very good. He's 18. And then the last class I wanted to mention is lock picking on April 27th here at 10 a.m. So if you're interested in being a criminal, maybe come do this. I don't know. He's going to talk about ethical use of this skill as part of his class. That's all we got coming up classes-wise. A couple other quick announcements. I forget whether it was this past Saturday. I think it was the one before. A bunch of folks showed up for our first milling around, which was kind of a maintenance and cleanup day in the machine shop. So thank you very much to everybody who did that and helped get those machines oiled and cleaned up and in better working order. So I really appreciate that volunteerism. Speaking of which, if you ever want to volunteer for Knox Makers, raise a hand. Talk to a board member. Do something. Pick up something. Like, we want to find opportunities, help you find opportunities to contribute in a way that feels good to you. So there's no dearth of opportunities. So, another just quick announcement. There's around in South Knox, down by the Kendora Marble Building, there's an annual thing called Festival. We're just kind of doing a little something with them. The details are still being worked out. But if you've been to Festival or if you haven't, we're going to be offering them some parking. They're going to shuttle some people. I think we're going to have some demos or tables or something here. It's not a big deal for us, it's not like our market, which takes a lot of effort. But if you're interested in festival, go, or we'll have more to share on that in the coming weeks if you want more details. And then just a quick reminder, had a couple instances lately of gates or doors not being fully secured. Just make sure you know how to do that. If you're the last person leaving the shop, do it. If you're not the last person leaving the shop, make sure the person left behind has a key and can lock those things up so it can keep this place secure. So, I think that's it for announcements, unless somebody knows of something I missed. Cool. We'll open up the shop, go make stuff, hang out, stay here, or come back here in 5 to 10 minutes if you want to learn to draw flowers, and go forth and be merry. Thank you.